Thanks for listening to the latest Beyond the Back Four podcast, available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single episode.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Back Four. It's Monday and we are reacting to three big football clubs and their big results at the weekend. We're going to talk about Arsenal and their huge win at Forest, Liverpool and Mo Salah's last second penalty, and the Manchester derby and the ramifications for both red and blue sides of the city. So joining us today, we've got Graeme Bailey and United in Focus editor Dan Coombs. Dan, how are you?
I'm all right. Not a greatest weekend from a football results point of view for United, but, we move on.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, we can't move on too much because we're going to have to talk about it. And of course, there'll be an episode on Wednesday that's going to come out. And in that episode, we are going to talk excessively about the fall and continued fall of Manchester United and what you two think are the best options, solutions and forward movements for the once European giant, now mostly embarrassment. So make sure you get that, and to everyone who's watching on YouTube, get in the comments below. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Let us know what you think of the conversation, and if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure you're following and subscribed so you get that episode on Wednesday to listen to the issues and the solutions to Manchester United's great and many problems. All right, let's start with Arsenal. Graeme, talk to us about Zubimendi. Is this what Arsenal fans were expecting when this transfer came about? Because that first goal was absolutely ludicrous.
It was great. I think that whole game just sums up the strength of Arsenal's squad now, which was a massive point of what Andrea Berta was trying to do over the summer, where it wasn't just signing replacements, but to have such an in-depth squad now. Odegaard went off early on, and Zubimendi stepped up. And that's what Arsenal are doing here. They have world-class players all over now. And Zubimendi, that's just a performance that I think we'll see on a regular basis now. He's a thoroughly important player for Spain. He's going to be a very important player for Arsenal, and he showed it at the weekend. It wasn't just the goal, the way he dictated play. He was sublime.
Dan, let's talk about Odegaard going off injured, because in previous seasons, especially from a United perspective, Arsenal have been a bit of fun to laugh at because they keep coming second. They never really challenge, though, do they? They just sort of are the next best team in seasons when someone has comfortably won the league. And a part of their problem has always been that lack of squad depth and injuries. It does seem like they're starting to fill those holes when injuries come, like Saka, unavailable, not been a problem.
Yeah, I mean, last season you saw Saka started the season on fire, and when he went out, their performances began to kind of trade off. They missed him. And this season, they've got options. They've got Madueke, with Odegaard going off. They've got Eze. They've got Nwaneri who can come on. They've got a real variety of options, and it's really hard to look at their squad and say that's a weak point. That's where they're lacking depth. That's where they're short. They have recruited well, and you kind of got to give them credit for that. And I think they're going to be hard to, yes, they lost to Liverpool the other week, but they're going to be right up there. They're going to be pushing throughout the season.
Talk about Viktor Gyökeres. Talk about them recruiting well. Only I think he's the third Arsenal player ever to score consecutive goals in his first appearances at, I don't know if this would have included Highbury, but certainly now that they've moved. Do you know who the other two are? Anyone want to guess?
Ian Wright?
Not Ian Wright.
Nicolas Anelka?
Not Nicolas Anelka. What if I told you one of them was Marouane Chamakh and the other was Lacazette?
Lacazette, fair enough. Well, it's no guarantee that it's going to sustain.
That's exactly what we can tell from that stat.
I mean, look, Gyökeres is a proven player in that he's experienced. He's one of the reasons I was quite keen on actually him coming to United was the fact that he's, unlike Benjamin Sesko, who we might get into, he's less of a project. He's a ready-made striker with European experience, and he's going to go straight into the Arsenal system and flourish. There were a couple of whispers early on after the first game against United where it was a bit flat, but overall, he's going to score goals. He'll probably end up with about 20, 25 this season, and I think Arsenal have recruited well with him. It was a sensible call by them to bring him in.
I mean, we're not talking about United, but Dan's brought up Benjamin Sesko. Graeme, do you think if you swapped the two goal scorers, the only difference would be the one at Arsenal would have scored goals and the one at United hadn't?
No, I think there's a big difference in the players. One's young, unproven. I think the other one's ready to go. And Andrea Berta had his choice of strikers here, Sam. Nobody did more work on Benjamin Sesko than Arsenal over the last 12 months. And Andrea Berta, when he came in, he did an awful lot of work on those two players. It's not to take away from Sesko, but as Dan said, he's a work in progress. He's not the finished article. So that's just where we are. I think Gyökeres is plug and play, ready to go. He's ready to fire a team towards title contention at the very least. And that's the difference.
Okay. Do you think Arsenal are now genuine challengers for the Premier League title in a way that maybe they haven't been in the last few years?
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of difference between Liverpool and Arsenal, to be fair. It's going to be a case of, it's almost like a war of attrition. So it's who's going to drop the least points between now and May. Liverpool will get into, they're not playing especially well, but they're grinding out wins, winning games, which is what you can ask for from a manager's point of view. Arsenal, again, they're not playing at full speed. They're not clicking into full gear yet. There's improvements they can make as well. But they're both going to get tested with injuries. They're both going to get tested with Champions League, domestic cups as well. And it's where these squads are going to really come into play. And Arsenal have as strong a squad as any. You could even argue their squad defensively is a lot stronger than Liverpool's. And over the course of the season, it's just a case of who drops the fewest points. So Liverpool and Arsenal are going to be probably with two to watch. And then City, your wild card, have probably dropped 2 more points than they would have liked early on, but they're going to be in the mix.
A brief word, Graeme, on Nottingham Forest. Do you think that Postecoglou will be the right man? He's got a dreadful record against Arsenal, played 5, lost 4, drawn 1.
Yeah, I think that was just a good time for Arsenal to play them. As Andy said after the game, we had one training session. But I thought it was really interesting what he said after the game, where his system will be in place very soon. It's not a project. He said that it's not a project of Forest he's come into. His system will be in place within the next week to 10 days. I do worry about Milinkovic at centre-half and Murillo. They're going to have an awful lot of defending to do going forward and an awful lot of running backwards. But I think this squad, unlike a lot of teams where you see a new manager coming in, we saw it with Amorim at United, he's had to rebuild the squad around his image. I think this Forest squad quite suits Ange. With the players going forward, Douglas Luiz and Elliot Anderson in midfield, Gibbs White. I think it'll suit Ange, and I think Forest, a different Forest we'll see, but a very exciting one and a very good one, I think.
We're going to move on to Liverpool now, but I'm going to introduce Liverpool with a stat about Arsenal as we've been comparing the two sides. Back in November 2021, Arsenal went on a 4-game run that stretched into December, in which they won 4 consecutive home games without conceding a goal. They are currently on a run of 3 home games in the Premier League, winning without conceding a goal. Liverpool, by contrast, Burnley slightly aside, have conceded a lot of goals so far this season. They are slightly different teams. What do we make of Liverpool? Were they better than Burnley? Did they deserve the win? Or was it a complete fluke that they got that penalty and managed to get 3 points?
I think you've got to give credit to Burnley. I mean, Burnley had a terrible start to the season. They looked like relegation fodder against Tottenham in their opening game. Then they went to Sunderland and won. They played well against United, and it was a lot of fun, kind of poked at United for that poor performance. And by the same token, not enough credit was given to Burnley for actually playing quite well. And they continued to play quite well against Liverpool. And they would have been well deserving of a point. Liverpool did well, similar to how United ground it out with a penalty in that week. So I think you kind of got to give Liverpool a bit of credit for kind of getting the result. But it was a silly mistake from Hannibal, which just ended up costing them the game.
Do you think it comes, Graeme, those moments where he just turns and it hits him in the elbow? On another day, it might have just whistled past him. They were defending for so long, just that slight lapse in focus and judgment.
I thought it was a strange one where, with very few of the penalty decisions we've seen with VAR and very recently that they were in question, he turned his elbow to the ball. It was actually nailed on handball. We didn't even need VAR to do it. I thought it was, as Dan said, it was a head scratcher, a very strange moment, and the former United man doing Liverpool a huge favour there, because that ball, we don't know what was going to happen with that ball from Frimpong. It could have gone anywhere. So. I just think this whole thing is very ominous for the rest of the Premier League. Liverpool are really getting used to this system. People are not really appreciating this is a real change of system for Liverpool. From 4-3-3 we saw last season, they're really going for that 4-2-3-1 now, and it's really interesting. And I think it suits some players, but other players it isn't really. And they're taking time to adapt to it. I think they will. And, I said they haven't got first gear and they're winning every game. It's really ominous for the rest of the Premier League and Europe.
There's still a lot of work they've got to do in terms of integrating Isak and Ekitike together. They're still working on getting the most out of the fullbacks, Frimpong and Kirkes, who were substituted early against Burnley. So I think there's still a lot of tweaks that Slot wants to make, and I'm not quite sure he's quite perfected exactly what he wants out of them, because they probably didn't come into the summer saying, right, we're going to sign Ekitike and Isak. That's kind of an opportunity which presented itself. But it's good. It's a great problem to have.
I think it's the midfield option, which is really interesting. And Gravenberch, I literally voted for him for Football of the Year. He's working overtime in there. It's not dissimilar what we'll come to with Manchester United. That midfield is a bit of an issue. Playing that double pivot, I don't think suits McAllister. It doesn't lend itself to Szoboszlai either. And I think they've got an issue there going forward. Not quite as bad as what United have got, but I think there's an issue there where they may look for another CDM in there. I think Curtis Jones can obviously do a job, but I think when you're relying on those two players in there to hold things together, with your full-backs going forward and your front four now, as it is rather than front three, I think the midfield's an interesting option there for Slot.
Well, I think it must be concerning for the rest of the Premier League that Liverpool are the first side in Premier League history to score a winning goal in the final 10 minutes or later of a Premier League game. It's never happened 4 times in a row. And this is happening right at the start of the season, whilst the team are very clearly getting used to a new system. So the last season we saw Arne Slot just slightly tinker what Jurgen Klopp had been doing, but now it's a different team and he's really putting his thumbprints on it and making sure people see it. This is his Liverpool side. And yet, while they're learning it, they're still winning games and winning them in the way that historically you point to and go, well, that's what champions do. They find a way to win.
Late goals are no fluke. Individually, yes. But consistent late goals, we see it with Sir Alex Ferguson's side. That's a trait. That's a mental strength of a team, quality, putting teams under pressure. And as you saw with Burnley, eventually it forced a mistake, all that possession and attacking dominance in the final third.
Yeah, I've got a great stat for you about Liverpool. Liverpool scored 47 goals in the 90th minute or later, meaning they're 13 more than any other side in Premier League history.
You knew it was coming, didn't you, that late one?
Especially when there's 4 minutes. But also you must feel that it's like if you're playing for Burnley. They must also think that. The crowd think that. It becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, probably haunted by the penalty at United the previous weekend as well. I think for their sake, probably glad it wasn't the same player.
What do you think we can expect as this Liverpool side start to adapt to their new formation, their slightly new system? Do you think there are players that people think of as, he's always in the team, that we might start missing out?
I think there's going to be some changes. Probably the challenger, as Graeme alluded to, is the two strikers with Isak and Ekitike. Is then where does then Cody Gakpo fill in? You're obviously going to have Salah in the side, Gakpo maybe on the left, but then are you going to really go with 4 forwards all the time, or are you going to revert to more of a 3 midfielders and 3 up front? Are you going to play one of the forwards wide? So there's going to be some changes, and that might depend on personnel available. It might depend on matchups, but good problem for them to have. But I think they're still settled on the best 11.
Well, with Isak playing, regardless of what happens with Ekitike, what do you think, Graeme, is the future for Mo Salah? Because in every other iteration of a Liverpool side, I mean, Firmino was the original number 9 when Salah first came to prominence as a Liverpool player. They haven't had a proper number 9, a goal scorer like Alexander Isak is. So that's given Salah room and opportunity to be the man who scores the goals, whereas it's not going to be his responsibility. And so presumably his positioning will be lessened in terms of chances created because it's someone else's job now.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. I think we'll see it with a squad where Salah won't have to play every single minute of every season like he has previously. We've got the likes of Wirtz coming into the system now. Rio Naguma, who looks a little superstar. Whenever he comes on, he's impactful, and we're going to see him getting more game time. I think it just sums up the quality of Liverpool's squad, where we'll start seeing some rotation where Mo Salah will be on the bench at times. But hey, if it means Ekitike, Gakpo and Isaac are the front 3, maybe so, or even Wirtz in there as well. The options Liverpool have now are quite staggering. They're as good as anything in world football.
We're going to move on to Manchester United, but before I do, just a really quick answer. Knowing that Liverpool are going to change and Salah could leave again at the end of the season, we're not sure what the future will be. He's on 188 Premier League goals. Will he reach 200?
Yes, I think he will this season. I would say 35 of those have been penalties, where he's just overtaken Andy Cole. And Andy Cole, one of those were penalties. So it's just an interesting comparison.
It is. Right, let's talk about Manchester United. Was it dysfunction from United yesterday, Dan, or was it City being excellent?
So we began the game pretty badly. With the first 20 seconds, Haaland almost scored. Apart from that, I felt we were actually in the game. We played pretty well, kind of leading up to the goal. And then, the problem with United is when we're trailing, it's hard to get back into games. We've seen it so often under Ruben Amorim. If we don't score first, which we often don't, we're going to struggle. We're not strong at scoring in the first half at all. I think we've scored one of the lowest rates of goals in the first half under Amorim in Europe. And you kind of knew that the second goal was going to be crucial. So, I think we kind of played reasonably well, but City were just ruthless. And, that's what we're lacking at the moment in the final third. We're not scoring the goals. We're creating chances, but we're not necessarily creating quality chances. And when half chances are there, when we're kind of snapping at them.
Graeme, what was your take on the game and the tactical battles?
I thought that Pep knew what was coming. I don't think Amorim knew what was coming from City. And we started from the team selection. Phil Foden playing centrally. I don't think many people predicted that pre-game. And United just didn't cope with him. You saw him advancing into that gap in between the defenders and the midfielders. And Ugarte was looking around for help and wasn't getting it. Reinders was pushing on as well. There was no one tracking him. And it was just so overbearing from City on United. Doku getting time in the ball. Bernardo Silva, who I didn't even think had a good game, but United struggled to cope with him really. And I thought City weren't there for the taking, but O'Reilly and Kushinov at fullback, United didn't look to press on that option at all. And I just think that City were pretty comfortable. I don't even think City were that great. But Phil Foden, I love seeing Phil Foden at his best. And it wasn't at his best, but I think he was outstanding. To see him like that again gives me hopes that he'll be back in the England contention very soon. For me, my favourite English midfielder. I think he's the most talented. And I thought he ran the game and United couldn't handle him.
I think we kind of lost more control in the second half, and we came into it in the last 10 minutes. But I think we've gone to the Etihad in previous years and been absolutely played off the park. I think that the time we conceded 6 under Ten Hag, there was another couple of games under Ten Hag where we demolished. By comparison, there was a level of improvement in this game, but it was just, City were ruthless. And to be fair, City probably could have had a couple more. So it could have been worse. But I think overall, our performance wasn't as terrible as, it has been in the past, but it was mistake laden.
Is that, in any sense, is that a reasonable way to judge the performance, to think, well, it wasn't as bad as when we lost 6-0? Because realistically, Manchester United should never lose 6-0 to anyone. So to think, well, we'll just judge it by that. It could have been worse. We didn't lose by 6. And this is a City team that were below United before the game started.
Yeah, I'm just kind of leaning back, to some of the big overreactions we've had in the past about heavy defeats and awful performances against City. I didn't feel this was kind of in that category. So it's just trying to kind of temper my own reaction to the display and the kind of form we've had this season, where the performances have been better than the results suggest. And obviously that can only last so long. But there are kind of some signs there where we're, got some positives. I mean, you look at Brian Mbeumo yesterday, he was our best player. Unfortunately, we didn't have 11 Brian Mbeumo's, because if we did, we would have probably got a result.
Do you think, when you look at someone like Brian Mbeumo and you think, Graeme, maybe this is something you can weigh down. You see a player like him who's come and he's new to Manchester United and he's trying really hard. But at the end of that 90 minutes and he's lost 3-0, that frustration is going to set in. And we see this, and this is something that has happened, is a sort of a pattern you can point to at Manchester United. People say when people leave, they're better. And I don't think that's true. I think they're just in a different environment. I don't think they become better football players or anything. But is there a possibility that in 3 months, Brian Mbeumo is the new, Anthony, where he just gets dragged down? Because you're right, he is the player that yesterday you go, well, he was the best one. And you could say the same against Grimsby, but then he was the one who missed his penalty against Grimsby. So he's the one that then gets the pressure and the complaints and the moans. And then slowly, does he just get dragged into the mire?
Well, obviously, from a United point of view, you hope not. You hope that he can drag the rest of them out of the mire and help them get where they want to be. And I think you have to do it. I think there are glimpses of positivity there for United. Euro and De Ligt, I think, look very good at the back at times, and there could be a foundation that United build upon. How much do we go on team selection and formation? That's something we can debate until the cows come home. It's like suddenly bringing Mazraoui in on the right and putting Diallo where he was. I think there's some very. I think Amorim is an outstanding coach, but I do the majority of this squad believe in Amorim's system? I'm still not convinced by that. And as we'll keep coming back to it, if the captain's not convinced by it, and the captain is there flouncing around on the pitch like Bruno Fernandes was, as he does whenever I see him numerous times, I think that's a problem. And I think we'll talk about it more in depth, I guess, in the future. But I just think the big problem at United, the elephant in the room, is Bruno Fernandes and his system. And until United solve that, I don't see the team moving forward.
Okay, you're right. We will talk more about Manchester United. That episode will come out on Wednesday, and it is excitingly titled The Fall and Fall of Manchester United. We've got just under 10 minutes left before we wrap this one up. So let's talk about some key themes from this weekend's football, starting with depth. Whose depth is now the most important and which clubs are struggling as a result?
I think that City's depth is surprisingly good at times. Again, I do question the what Pep's doing with his defenders. I think Kushnerov and O'Reilly, whilst United weren't able to do that, I think if he lines up with them two as full-back in future games, there'll be some managers licking the lips, because I don't think that's going to win City any titles at all. But I do like the depth there. I think Reinders and Rodri, I think give City that real depth that we haven't seen for a while. Because let's not forget, I think City are coping. The amount of players who've left there, from Akanji, De Bruyne, Gundogan, Ederson. I don't think we really credit City with the overhaul that they've had this summer. So I give City a bit of credit there. I think they are better than a lot of people think, and they have got a real depth there.
I think Chelsea are an interesting side for depth. Got one of the biggest squads in the league. I think what we're trying to work out is who should be first choice and who should be second choice. But that will translate over the course of the season once they figure it out. They've got options which other clubs just don't have.
Let's talk about game management. Who impressed you over the weekend?
In that one, I liked Newcastle and Nico Voltemeda scoring his first goal. And part of that is just the bravery from Eddie Howe to say, look, we've signed this new striker for 70, 80 million. Let's throw him straight in. And he was rewarded with a goal first off. And you kind of compare that with United, where we're like, okay, let's put Benjamin Sesko in for 20 minutes here, for 20 minutes there. Let's leave Senna Lemons on the bench and play Alte Bandir. I just thought it was a bold call. Let's just go straight in with Voltemade. Let him learn on the job. And he was paid off with that.
I think if Wissa hadn't got injured, I think he would have played and it wouldn't have worked out that way. So it's just one of those nice little things for him where it all lined up perfectly.
I'll stick to the North East, and don't worry, guys, I'm not going Middlesbrough, although we are top of the Championship. I'm going Sunderland at Crystal Palace. I think the way they went to Crystal Palace and the way they defended who we used to beat was magnificent. Granted, Xhaka, who we did think was an incredibly good signing, but they've got the two new centre halves. Alderete played really well, but Mukiele, a guy I know who Manchester United looked at under Ten Hag, a fascinating player, really good calibre. And the goalkeeper Roofs as well, who's even got his own song already. I thought the game plan and the game management from Regis Labrie was so impressive in that game, and they thoroughly deserved their point at Palace. And for a newly promoted team to go to Palace and do that, I think is really, really impressive.
What do you think of Sunderland this season, Gray? How far they can go?
Yeah, I think the money they've spent has been really wise. I think, and I love what they did on deadline day down with them to the Traore and Brobby. Well, I think that's what they were lacking. But on deadline day, I think they helped solve that. Isidore, they've got real depth across the squad, which is really impressive. So then, the likes of Chris Rigg, Dan Neil, they're not in contention at the minute, and they don't because they're not warranting that place in the team. The young Steaky and Diarra who've come into midfield. I'm really impressed with Sunderland, and what they've done in the summer, and they're by far the most impressive of the promoted teams. And coming into the summer, I thought they would have the biggest task on their hands to survive. But fair play to them, they've really backed the manager.
Right, let's talk about the title challenges then. Do you think anything changes? Does City put their name in the ring now with that statement victory, or is it still just Arsenal and Liverpool?
I think if City had lost, they would have been in 17th with 3 points. So, yeah, you can always recover from that, but you can't sit there and say, oh, yeah, we're title contenders. I think now it is Arsenal, Liverpool, and City. City are going to be up there. I think to dismiss them would be silly.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. I think it is a 3-horse race. I think I would have Chelsea up there as outsiders, but as I've said in previous podcasts, the goalkeeper worries me to death at Chelsea. I think they can't win a title with him. And the fact they've lost Levi Colwill and not replaced him, we did wonder. Enzo Maresca is really adamant he wanted another defender in. And having lost Colwill and having seen Chelsea's last couple of performances, Torsen and Chalobah, you can see why he was desperate to bring another one in, because they're nowhere near the standard they need to be if Chelsea are going to contend for a title.
Right, we're going to round off with some quick fire questions. So just immediate answers. So, Dan, player of the weekend.
Antoine Semenyo, assist, penalty, goal for Bournemouth, and he's carrying on where he first game of the season against Liverpool. He was outstanding, and he was key to Bournemouth's win at the weekend.
I would say if it wasn't one of the City boys, I think Christian Romero at Tottenham. I think it was absolutely masterful. He was the best centre half in the Premier League. That pass he put in for Bergwall, it was just sublime. It was amazing, and I thought Tottenham were back to their best at West Ham. Not that they needed to be. That's the caveat. But I thought Romero was absolutely brilliant.
Well, producer Ned will be very happy with that answer. Something from the weekend that made you worry. Dan, I imagine there's a lot here.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think probably the biggest worry is the fact United are still sticking with Ate, Bayindir and goal. We've signed a new goalkeeper. Let's just play him.
Unfortunately for Chelsea fans, I think it's just underlined, as Louis alluded to, that Chelsea can't win the title. I haven't seen them defend against Brentford. And I think Leeds United are suddenly the favourites for relegation.
That has been us on Beyond the Back Four for another week. We're back on Wednesday with that episode all about the fall and fall of Manchester United. Graeme, thank you. Dan, thank you. Everyone watching, make sure you're subscribed, like, comment, get involved. Tell us who was your player of the weekend. We'll see you on the next one.